Your phone buzzes. You look down and see that someone is calling you. Not texting, not emailing, actually calling. And for a split second, maybe longer than a split second, your stomach drops. You feel this weird, low-grade dread, like you've just been asked to speak at a funeral you didn't know you were attending. So you stare at the screen, you watch it ring, and you think, I'll just text them back. Sound familiar? If you're nodding right now, you're not alone. And if the people in your life have ever looked at you like you're slightly defective for not picking up, I want you to stay with me, because there is so much more going on beneath that screen than anyone gives you credit for. We live in a world that has decided, somewhere along the way, that refusing a phone call is rude, avoidant, maybe even a little suspicious. But here's what psychology actually tells us. The people who dread phone calls are often some of the most thoughtful, emotionally aware, communication-conscious people in the room. The aversion isn't laziness. It isn't rudeness. It's your brain doing something incredibly specific. And once you understand what that is, you'll never look at your missed calls the same way again. So let's talk about it. To understand why phone calls feel so loaded for certain people, you first have to understand what a phone call actually demands of your brain. Think about a text message. It arrives. You read it. You have time, 10 seconds, 10 minutes, 10 hours, to think, to compose, to choose your words. There's a buffer between your raw thoughts and your output. You're essentially an author, quietly editing in real time. A phone call strips that buffer away entirely. The moment someone's voice is in your ear, your brain has to do something extraordinary. It has to simultaneously listen, process meaning, formulate a response, manage your tone of voice, read the emotional temperature of the other person, and do all of this with no pause button, no rewind, no time to think. For some brains, especially those wired towards sensitivity, introversion, or anxiety, that's not a minor inconvenience. That's genuinely draining in a way that's hard to explain to someone who doesn't feel it. And the thing is, most of us have quietly restructured how we prefer to connect over the years. Text, email, voice notes. Asynchronous communication, the kind where you have a moment to breathe before you respond, has become the native language for a huge number of people. It fits how we think. It gives us room to be our best, most considered selves. And then a phone call comes along and asks us to throw all of that out and be completely real-time, completely exposed, completely unedited. And our nervous system treats it like a surprise exam we never signed up for. Now here's where it gets really interesting, because it's not just about cognitive load. There's something deeper going on, something more emotional, more primal than just, it's a lot to process. When you're on a phone call, you can hear a voice, but you cannot see a face. And human beings are, at their core, visual communicators. So much of what we understand about each other, the warmth, the sarcasm, the nervousness, the affection, lives in expressions, in micro-movements, in the way someone's eyes shift when they're about to say something difficult. A phone call takes all of that away. You're left with tone and words alone, and your brain, being the relentless pattern-seeking machine it is, will try desperately to fill in the gaps. Did that silence mean they're annoyed? Was that laugh a little hollow? Are they distracted? Do they actually want to be talking to me right now? For people who are naturally more attuned to social cues, and phone aversion tends to run high in people who are deeply empathetic and interpersonally aware, this missing information isn't just uncomfortable, it's activating. Your brain's threat detection system doesn't always distinguish neatly between a genuinely dangerous situation and an ambiguous one. It treats both with the same quiet alarm. That low hum of unease when the phone rings, that's not irrationality. That's your nervous system responding to uncertainty. And the mind, above almost everything else, hates uncertainty. Which is why some people actually find phone calls more exhausting than difficult face-to-face conversations. At least in person, you have the whole picture. On the phone, you're navigating in the dark. There's also a performance dimension to this that I think gets overlooked almost entirely. A phone call is, in its own quiet way, a performance. You're expected to sound coherent, warm, responsive, present, all in real time, with no script and no second draft. For anyone who carries even a thread of social anxiety, that pressure is significant. It's not really about being shy. It's about the fear of being caught unguarded, of stumbling, of saying something clumsy and not being able to take it back or rephrase it the way you could in a message. There's a tendency we all have, to some degree, to overestimate how much other people notice our little stumbles and awkward pauses. But for someone with phone anxiety, that tendency gets amplified dramatically during a call. Every moment of dead air, every time you mishear something and have to ask them to repeat it, it all feels enormous. It feels like evidence of something, like you're failing at the basic human task of just talking to someone. But of course, the other person isn't cataloging your stumbles. They're too busy managing their own version of the conversation to notice yours. We rarely extend ourselves that compassion, though, not in the moment. I also want to talk about something that feels very specific to the way modern life is actually lived. A lot of us spend our days in a near constant state of social performance. Meetings, emails, conversations that require a certain level of warmth and professionalism, emotional labor in every direction. By the time evening rolls around, the more sensitive or introverted person is genuinely depleted, not because they're antisocial or cold, but because they've already spent every unit of social energy they had. And a phone ringing at 7 p.m. asking them to be on, articulate, engaged, emotionally present in real time, doesn't feel like connection. It feels like a final exam at the end of an exhausting shift. This is why so many people who struggle with phone calls don't actually struggle with talking. They love deep conversations. They'll text you a paragraph that took 10 minutes to write because they wanted to get it exactly right. They thrive when the conditions are right. It's not about connection, it's about conditions. It's about the very real difference between reaching out on your own terms and being summoned into real-time performance with no warning. There's something almost philosophically presumptuous about a phone call when you think about it. It arrives without asking. It commandeers your full attention immediately. It expects you to show up, present and articulate, right now. Whereas a text is a knock on the door, a call is someone walking straight in. So what does all of this mean for you? If you're someone who dreads phone calls, who watches the screen ring and feels that familiar knot, I want you to hear this clearly. There is nothing broken about you. Your brain is not malfunctioning. You are likely someone who communicates most honestly, most fully, when you have a moment to think, when you have the whole picture, when you're not being asked to perform under a spotlight you never agreed to stand beneath. Knowing that about yourself isn't a weakness. It's one of the more useful forms of self-knowledge a person can have. You understand how you're wired. That kind of clarity is genuinely rare. And if you're on the other side of this, if you have someone in your life who never picks up, who always sends a message back instead, try to resist the reflex to read it as dismissal. It may simply mean they want to give you their whole, considered self, rather than their harried, unguarded, on-the-spot self, which, if you sit with it for a moment, is actually a quiet form of respect. The phone was built for a world that had fewer options, a world where the call was the only way through. Now we have 100 roads to each other, and the call is just one of them. Not the default, not the gold standard, just a choice. And like any choice, it carries different weight for different people. Your relationship with the phone is, in its own small way, a window into how your nervous system meets the world. Whether you love the immediacy of a call, or whether you need the stillness of a written message, neither says anything fundamental about your capacity for real, deep, human connection. It just means you're human. And humans are wonderfully, stubbornly, beautifully complicated things. If you recognized yourself somewhere in this video, come tell me about it in the comments. Are you a devoted phone avoider? A reluctant caller who white-knuckles through it anyway? Or are you the person calling everyone while they watch it ring? No judgment, genuinely. That conversation tends to be the most interesting one. And if you want more of this kind of deep dive into the quiet mechanics of how your mind actually works, stick around. There's plenty more where this came from.